Welcome to the Intrazone Roadmap Pitstop November 2020 edition. This is a bonus monthly show that answers that burning question in your mind. What's rolling out now for SharePoint and related technology in Microsoft 365? I'm Mark Cashman, Senior Product Manager on the Microsoft 365 marketing team, here to set the ongoing record straight. This month, I talk with Dag Edison, our Principal Program Manager on the Microsoft Search team, who recently focused on designing and delivering the new My Feed web part. We'll get into all the goodness behind the scenes and, of course, what the web part does. November brought new innovation across the spectrum of employee engagement and teamwork across the internet. We'll focus on what landed this month, including a few related items and the always fun teasers looking into next month. This podcast is your 30 minutes to stay informed and ahead of the ever-curving Microsoft 365 roadmap. We'll start with employee engagement, that one to almost everybody, if not everybody, throughout the intranet. The first feature is a new SharePoint site performance page. This new page helps site owners and editors make high-impact page improvements to improve the page health and overall site performance and end-user experience. Page health measures page performance, which impacts the viewing experience and the page's ability to engage viewers and, of course, serve its purpose. You'll get actionable feedback on things like how certain page or site assets might benefit from a content delivery network, a CDN, what web parts and their usage might make as an impact in terms of page load times, any images that are too large, how many requests are being sent to the back end, things like that, things that you can adjust. Each test result displays specific test results and the details that then provide guidance on how to resolve those issues. So there is a great tool that you can use and see whether it's a particular site or a really important thing like a homepage. You'll get the health and some actionable things that you can make it better. The next is the My Feed web part. This web part shows a mix of content from across Microsoft 365 based on what's likely to be the most relevant thing to the current user at any given time. The feed is personal. Different users, of course, will see different content. One thing to note that only content that the user has permission to access will be shown. So this is where we're going to take a pause and speak to one of our program managers, Dag, to find a little bit more about what goes behind the scenes in the My Feed web part and, of course, what it does. And one little teaser of information, I actually used to manage the Delve experience, the Delve app, taking a handoff from my peer, Jem Aiken, who is now part of the engineering team. So you might hear me reference a little bit about that past or some of the things around Delve, but it certainly is that first instance of how we can visually interpret the graph, but it's really exciting to see where the team has brought it with one of the latest instances to be able to use on any site or portal, the My Feed web part. So let's take a pause and have a chat with Dag Edison from the Microsoft Search team. All right, well, it is that time now to take a moment of reflection with the engineering team. Today, we are joined to learn a lot more about the My Feed web part and all the smarts behind it from Dag Edison, who is from our team in Norway. But that's enough of me describing who Dag is and what he does. Dag, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so I work in the FAST organization within Microsoft, and I work and live in Tromsø, which is a small town in northern Norway, way north of the Arctic Circle.
Oh, excellent.
We're actually an office of 60 people up here.
Oh, wow. So you are already wearing gloves. How is it with the snow level so far?
We have about 30, 40 centimeters outside now. Yeah.
So just to put a little context, you mentioned FAST. A lot of our audience might know what that means, but can you just give us that short history and what it actually means today?
Yeah, so we were a Norwegian search company back in the days called Fast Search and Transfer. And that company was acquired by Microsoft in 2008. And I've been with Microsoft since then. Over the years, we have continued doing search, but have now also moved into other exciting areas.
Yeah, that's a journey. You know, I joined just shortly after FAST had been acquired, but it really was a separate product. and it was very server oriented. But as it's evolved, it's done some amazing things, not only integrating with SharePoint, integrations with Exchange and broadening out to now this, hybrid search and everything. But I think the real value is, I don't want to minimize it, but it's got the two areas. The biggest one that we've been making a lot of noise about recently is Microsoft Search, this pervasive search engine, no matter where you look in Microsoft 365 or even Bing or on your desktop. You've got this great search experience. But I think a lot of what we're going to talk about is what happens behind the search or when search is happening already for you, right? We'll get to talking about the new component, the My Feed web part, but can you talk a little bit about some of the planning and some of the philosophy or design when you think about connecting all of these content signals and maybe even explaining what that means so that people, when they log into Microsoft 365, have some great personalized experiences?
Yes, you mentioned when the system sort of searches for you in the background, and that was a thing we started with 5 or 6 years ago with a product you may know called Delve. This product we tried to look at help you find the content without searching for it. So we looked at what are your colleagues looking at these days? What are the important documents for your colleagues? And then suggest these documents to you as a sort of background search. So you didn't have to go and actively search for these documents, but they popped up for you.
You mentioned Delve, and Delve certainly is a part of Microsoft 365 today. But I've heard both internally and externally people describe it as the first application that really helped visualize what the Microsoft Graph was. And per this conversation, maybe just taking a moment to describe what is the Microsoft Graph, especially from an end user perspective, some of the content that is displayed when the graph, is describing based on who you work with, what you work on, what is some of the interesting content that you might come across. What role does the graph and maybe what is the graph play into this now feed of information?
So the graph contains information about all the documents and many of the actions that people do on these documents. And that allows us to, starting from you as a person, go out and look at what are the connections with you and the rest of M365 through the content that you interact with and through the people that you interact with. And based on that, we're sort of able to find and suggest content to you that you otherwise might not have found on your own.
From the viewpoint of then what the user sees as the output of what the graph is constantly looking at and promoting to the end user, if we went from the days of fast, Microsoft Search, the learnings from Delve, what would you say were some of the challenges to get it right in this new instance of the present day graph? And, we'll start to talk about how it's visualized through the My Feed, but what learnings and what challenges were we faced with to get it right?
A couple of things that we learned from Delve were first that it was a bit too document centric. Looking across M365, there's a lot more content there that can help you get through the day that is important for people to be productive and do their work in the best way. Another thing we found was that Delve has a lot of fans, but it is still a separate destination. So it was a challenge to get people to actually discover this experience and find these documents that we were suggesting to them. So we really wanted to expand on what we were doing and suggest other types of content and bring this to people where they are instead of having this separate destination. These were one of the main learnings. These were the two main learnings we had from Delve.
So if we take from those learnings and maybe we can start to put it into context with talking about the new My Feed web part and how it addressed some of those challenges, maybe first we can start with what is the new My Feed web part, and then let's talk about how has it helped adjust for the challenge of not just documents and meeting people where they work every day. But first, what is the new My Feed web part?
So the My Feed web part is a web part that tries to help users stay on top of what's going on in the company by looking across all the content, the items, events that are going on and that exist in the different workloads in M365. Bring this together in one web part and rank this content for you personally, so that the most important content shows up every time you see it. And this content includes not only documents, which we of course have kept from Delve, but important meetings that are coming up, meeting recordings that have happened, and so on.
So if by addressing the content challenge, obviously the expansion is there are a lot of content types throughout Microsoft 365 that people touch all the time. They work on documents, that is a given, but they're also chatting and having conversations, and they're in email and having meetings. And there's even the context of all of that blended together. What makes a good meeting is how prepared are you for that meeting. But with other content types coming on board, the other challenge was meeting people where they are. What does that mean? I know the challenge of the past with Delve, as great of an application it was, that you're right, it was the challenge of making it aware of what it is. Is it a worthy destination to go to? What am I seeing? Just getting people used to seeing something that isn't manual or programmed. But what is that way that we've addressed on either through the MyFeed web part, putting that in a closer location contextually, or maybe the smarts behind the MyFeed web part that are driving other new experiences that are closer to the everyday use? What have we done to address that?
One of the actions that we did from our learnings from Delve is that we created a technology that can create a feed of these interesting items and events from M365 and display them in multiple experiences. And we are doing that today on office.com on the recommended strip there. We are doing it in Outlook Mobile on the search page there. There is also a strip called recommended with this type of content. And then we figured out how can we distribute this content further to where people actually are. And that's when the idea of a web part struck us. Many people start their days in company portals or other places in SharePoint. This struck us as a good place where we could surface this personalized and important content.
With the history of Delve, I can think of what were the scenarios that I would turn to go to Delve. And a lot of times it was, I know who owns or would work on this, and I find that person, and I usually could then see the content that they've made available, reminding everybody in the audience that no matter where you land with some of these web parts or built-in experiences, you're not exposed to material that you're not supposed to see. The one thing I really like about the MyFeed web part and thinking through some of our demos to put it into context is oftentimes when you see a Contoso demo, you'll see the MyFeed web part now, in a vertical strip. And it really is just a nice scroll to see your upcoming meetings, your documents of interest, times that you were either shared content or somebody's editing something else. But I thought, Dag, and you can maybe validate just as I'm looking at these two things, I'm on office.com right now, and I can see that there is a document that I was working on with one of my peers. There was a folder that I had accessed. There's a meeting that was recorded that I was a part of. There's a news article that somebody had posted that's of interest to me because of its a similar group. There's comments and app mentions that are being called out as things that are relevant to Mark. That's office.com. And on our internal portal, without giving away too much, because I know that people will experience themselves, I'm really seeing that same feed of content when people app mention me or they share a document or are just working on something that the graph is thinking is relevant to me. And in my scroll, I can see everything I just said, what we call my feed on our internal portal that does leverage the MyFeed web part. So that evolution that you described from Delve to either manual portal experiences that people can build, adding that dynamic nature, or what we're doing with office.com. What are some of the things, though, when somebody's using the MyFeed web part, what are the choices that they can make? And the big one is to use it or not. But beyond that, what are some of the choices they can make to make the feed work for them in the way that you've built it?
So for admins, the ones that sort of put this web part on their page, they can, of course, set how many items to show and change the name. But there's one important setting where they can choose whether or not to include SharePoint news articles, for example. We put this in there because we saw the company portal as an important place for the web part. But company portals will often have news web parts set up specifically for that company. And so SharePoint news articles aren't really necessary to have in the web part. This is one way of letting the admins better control what content is on the company portals.
I think that's the important thing is once the design that is really the customer's want and design of how they want to present their portal, and it could be the company portal, it could also be, just a organizational or a regional level portal within the company using some of these same components. And I always think of, and you reminded me that there is not only the web part that you can use, but the ways that you can program it and have it be in context with other web parts that are showcasing either other types of content or just very specifically one type of content. And I would think, just for a refresher and the value that the MyFeed web part brings is if you're building a portal and you're using the news web part or multiple news web parts, if you're using the highlighted content web part, some of the Yammer components, and then now the MyFeed, you have a very programmed and dynamic portal. When you think about that and the choices that you made to maybe have it so that you don't include SharePoint news, how do you think about the balance of when people build out portals, giving them those choices so that they can kind of have we want a message for everybody, but we also want it to be personalized?
That's a very good point. I think that's one of the goals of this web part. It being so personalized is that it will have content for any person in the company, or at least many people in the company, whereas many of the other web parts are perhaps tailored to certain types of employees or users that work with certain types of content. The MyFeed web part looks across everything and can more easily fill up with content and not become stale or not have content at all, as might happen for some web parts.
Yeah, and I think the charter of your team hits on the most common feedback I remember from the past. And it wasn't a SharePoint feedback. It was the nature of portals that unless you did a lot of significant work, even in the past, have things be search-based instead of graph-based. The past, for a lot of portals that people built or tried to build, it was a static experience. So you didn't get a lot of return visitors. But as your work and things like the MyFeed web part bring us into the future and make it a more dynamic, personalized, relevant experience, just to close off here, is there anything you can tell us, if even just by the design of other things that you're working on into the future, even enhance this intranet becoming more dynamic?
Well, as I mentioned, the feed web part is part of a larger push to get this kind of recommendations out in many experiences. And we are working hard to ensure that it will cover all of M365 and that we will be adding more content types as time goes by, and these will pop up over time. And we will also continuously be working on improving the ranking, making it even more personalized and tuned into each user's need. So we cover 4 content types right now on release, but there will be more to come.
That's great. I think that was my first, besides knowing that this is the work that we were doing to make portals more dynamic and more, individualistic to the person, is when I saw that it reminded me of an upcoming meeting on the home page of what we have as our company portal that we call Microsoft Web. And I said, Dag's done it. He's done it. He's given me what I've looked for when I turned to MSW is what is the company doing and what am I doing? And it's a really nice blend. So my compliments to you and the team. Dag, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, just awareness of when multiple teams work together, is when you're working on something like the MyFeed web part that takes in a lot of content and blends a lot of technology, what are some of the internal workings or challenges that we have just working across teams, across technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. It might sound simple to make a feed like this where all you have to do is sort of call out to the graph or to some APIs and aggregate and return to the client. But actually, this is very hard. There are many teams to talk to sort of iron out all the details. There are latency issues. There are authentication issues. This is actually a much harder problem than we thought when we started this. But it's also very interesting to get to sort of try to reap the benefits of everything that's going on around in Microsoft and try to break down sort of the silos between all these different workloads that we have.
I commend you on bridging beyond the Atlantic and making those connections. So it really does result into great experiences, and certainly know that it's not easy.
Thank you, Mark. It's one of the pleasures, but also sometimes hardships of working in such a global company.
So beyond the future, to keep up to speed with everything that you and your team are working on, beyond me flying and having everybody fly up to Norway to knock on your door, what's the best way that people can keep abreast of what you're doing?
Well, you can go and follow the Microsoft Search Twitter handle, where we'll update you on news about the MyFeed web part.
Excellent. All right. I'll put a link so that people can go and follow Microsoft Search and anything Microsoft Search related. But certainly through this channel, through the roadmap, anytime that you've got news like the MyFeed web part or anything in the future, we'll make sure to highlight it. For today, Dag, I want to thank you for your time on the Intrazone.
Thank you.
Okay, I will say, of course, it's always fun to talk to somebody from Norway, from the FAST team, to get the insights. And I think there's a lot of clarity on how you can use this to really enhance your intranet, especially those broader portals, to make them exactly what you want them to be, which I think one of the most important things is a place that people want to come back to, a place that speaks to each individual as an individual, that makes it more personalized, makes it more engaging, and of course, keeps the intranet as relevant as possible. With that, let's switch over and talk about the teamwork side of things. How do people work together into one-to-one, one-to-few, across all teams and of all sizes, but especially when they're thinking of collaborating on different types of content? The first thing we'll start is a new Microsoft Lists feature that we brought, which is called the undo or redo. People who edit their lists when they're in grid view will be able to retract any unwanted changes or bring back previously entered information. And you can do this with up to 100 actions in any individual edit session. Simply click undo or redo, these new buttons that you will see when you enter edit mode. Or if you like keyboard shortcuts and the good accessibility of using the keyboard shortcuts, you can use Control-Z that will undo when you're in Windows, or Control-Y with redo on Windows. For macOS, it's Command+Z for undo and Command-Shift-Z for redo. And like Harry Callahan might say, "Go ahead, Microsoft 365 user, make my day by making my mistake go away or come back." Okay, I'm paraphrasing under the guise of a terrible impersonation, but you get the point. There is justice in undoing and redoing, and we'll just leave it at that. The next feature is at a glance and key points that you will see in sharing emails. When users share Word files, the sharing email will include information about the estimated time it will take a user to read the document, as well as a list of the key points in the document. Note that files that have been marked as sensitive by Data Loss Prevention, DLP, will not include this information. These insights can save you a lot of time during email triage or when you're looking for that one particular document. It's an instant reminder at a glance. Thank you very much, Artificial Intelligence, for the summary cliff notes in email for Word documents. The last item in teamwork is that we've updated the SharePoint tab app in Microsoft Teams. We've improved the tab experience when adding pages, lists, or document libraries to channel in Teams. It's easy to select multiple content types from the connected team site or by providing a link to any page, list, or library to which the user has access. We've also added a new recommended section in the SharePoint tab to help users easily find the most relevant content from their site to pin in their channels as tabs. Think of it as a one-stop shop for adding various types of existing content that began in SharePoint. Note, this tab app does live alongside other SharePoint-based tab apps for the individual content types, aka there is a Lists app, a Pages app, and a Document Library app. This is an area of investment to ensure you can easily connect content stored in SharePoint by bringing it into Teams channels. All right, that's it with Teamwork. We hope your collaboration sails with all these new features and updates. Time to turn the attention to some related technology. The first feature is the new Microsoft Graph connectors for Microsoft Search. Microsoft Search indexes all of your Microsoft 365 data to make it searchable, of course. With Microsoft Graph connectors, your organization can now index third-party data so that it appears in Microsoft search results. The following Microsoft-built connectors will be available within the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. There is a connector for Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, Enterprise Websites, MediaWiki, Microsoft SQL Server, ServiceNow, and Windows File Share. In addition to the Microsoft-built connectors, there are more than 100 connectors that are available for preview from our third-party ecosystem partners. This area of investment from Microsoft and its partners will help you make your company's search results more and more inclusive of content you want your organizations to have access to, with content and repository permissions intact, of course. The next related item comes from OneDrive, the ability to more easily create a shared library directly from within the OneDrive web experience. This is something that we've been working on for a while, and I think we've got it just right, at least much more refined so that it's clear what you're doing. The end goal is that it's a more simple and easy way to create collaborative spaces for your shared files and folders for team members to access and collaborate on files from anywhere on any device. The new experience is more streamlined within OneDrive, which means fewer clicks with greater clarity while leaving the structure of the underlying team site intact. One note here is that shared libraries are backed by Microsoft 365 groups, so the group automatically gets access to the files that members put in the shared library. So it's a much more streamlined experience and an easy way to create a space to share files and folders. The last item in related technology is that Microsoft Forms are now powering the polling experience for Microsoft Teams meetings. We're creating a new way for meeting presenters to poll attendees. Any meeting presenter can add the Forms app as a tab in the Teams meeting. Before the meeting, the presenter can create draft polls. During the meeting, the presenter can create and launch polls that attendees can view and answer. All attendees will be able to see the results in real time, and respondents can respond to a poll after the meeting if the poll has not been closed, an important notion to ensure all attendee voices are heard. Okay, close your eyes and visualize the future, 1 month from now. Here are 2 teasers for what's coming in December 2020. Teaser number 1, the SharePoint Portal Launch Scheduler. It's a nice tongue twister, and it's a feature designed to help coordinate and schedule launch details for SharePoint sites that are expected to receive high volumes of traffic. Teaser number 2, Microsoft Lists Rules. Rules rule, and I think you're going to love rules. And we'll tell you more next month. That's it with the crystal ball for November 2020. We'll share more details and other features and updates within the full SharePoint Roadmap Pitstop December 2020 edition. We've added a list of important resource links in the show notes and in the corresponding blog post on the Microsoft Tech community within the SharePoint community blog, giving you all that you need to get up to speed and, of course, stay ahead. I hope you've enjoyed this Roadmap Pit Stop, a time to relax knowing that you're all caught up. If anything seems funny or confusing, please do send us your comments and ask questions. We are here to put our and your best change management foot forward. Now you gotta ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky about this roadmap? Well, do ya, Intrazoner? I hope so. Until next month, all the best to you and yours from the SharePoint and Microsoft 365 gang here in Redmond, Washington. It's unavoidable. I saw Dirty Harry, I saw the bad guy being unreleased features, and now that they are released, you gotta feel lucky. Well, do ya?